If you do need captioning, you will be able to read it here on both of the screens. You can also scan these QR codes and read it on your device if you haven't tried that yet. So it'll open it up in a browser window and you'll be able to follow along if you're back in the back. All right, without further ado, thank you for coming to our keynote. I am so excited to introduce Evan Wolkenstein. He is great. Oh, yes. I don't remember exactly how I found this book, but I remember listening to it on the audiobook, and it really, truly touched me and changed my life the way that only the best books can do. And so I will read his bio here, but you are in for a true treat, and I am so excited. So, Mr. Evan Wolkenstein is a high school teacher and a writer. He attended the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Hebrew University, and the Pardes Institute for Jewish Studies. His work can be found in The Forward, Tablet Magazine, The Washington Post, Engadget, My Jewish Learning, and Bim Bam. I hope I said that right. He lives with his wife and daughters in the San Francisco Bay Area. Turtle Boy is his first novel and the winner of the 2021 Sidney Taylor Book Award. So please let's give a warm welcome to Evan.
Ooh, such long eyelashes. Old ladies used to go nuts over my eyelashes. Apparently, I was a very cute little kid, and I knew it, because when Mom took me to the mall, we'd be standing in line, grannies would be going absolutely nuts. I have this picture of myself in 4th grade at school in the cutest little brown plaid suit. Shocking, right? Bow tie. What kid wears a plaid suit to school? One who's pretty sure he's really cute. Right? In the picture, I am so working the camera. Then, in 6th grade, this kid says, "Hey, you look like a turtle." I had no idea what he was talking about. I just kind of laughed it off. I thought, I like turtles. Second kid comes along. "He does look like a turtle." "How do I look like a turtle?" I went home that afternoon determined to understand. I got the sense that they were not speaking from the perspective of like a herpetologist who thinks that turtles are super charming. It was clear that they were making fun of me. But how? I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror over the sink, looked this way and that way. Couldn't figure it out. Picked up my mother's makeup mirror, this vintage thing. Held it like that, like that. And then I realized the mirror was broken. Instead of my face, there in the glass, was a turtle. So I went screaming down the stairs, Mom, the mirror is broken. And she's like, "You broke the mirror?" And I'm like, no, it's broken. Come on. So I pull her upstairs. She picks up the mirror, she looks in it, nothing special. And then I show her, I hold it up. Turtle. So she says, "We need to talk to a doctor." So she made an appointment with a doctor, not a reptile doctor, like a human doctor, somebody who specializes in turtle humans. And he said, "Yes, you are a turtle." Okay, now, I didn't want to be a turtle. I like being a cute kid, cute eyelashes. And he said, "Well, we're gonna need to do some things to help you with the situation." So what kind of things? He said, "Well, first of all, braces." So I was like, okay, braces are fine. You know, I knew a lot of teenage friends who had braces. It seemed like a very teenagery thing to do. And he said, "You're also gonna have a neck gear. So go like that. You're gonna have headgear like that. You're gonna look a little like a Soviet-era Sputnik satellite." And he told me about the operation that was ahead of me. He used some scary verbs. Disconnect, reconnect, remove something from here and stick it here. And then he said, "And you're gonna have your jaw wired shut a couple months, and you're gonna be drinking everything through a straw." And I said, "Like milkshakes?" He said, "Well, yeah, but you can't have ice cream every day." And he goes on to this whole thing, but all the amazing foods you can eat blended through a straw. He's like, tacos, pizza, cheeseburgers, like that's the greatest thing of all time. Meanwhile, I'm like sliding down against the wall. And what he didn't tell me was that soon I was also going to have a new name. One that would last up to the surgery, after the surgery, and somehow, no matter how fast I ran, it just kept crawling after me, semester after semester, year after year, chasing me through the decades. Turtle Boy. And that story is 100% true. Every image, every word. Doesn't mean it's 100% historically accurate. It's mostly historically accurate, but my actual mother did not see a turtle in the mirror. She saw her son, the son that she loved, with the same face that he always had. But when it comes to history, the accuracy is essential to the quality. Bad facts, bad history. Get rid of it. But in the world of stories, we're going to be exploring this today a little bit, this tension, this creative tension between truth and historical accuracy in story world. Now, to be clear, story world is very interested in history. Think about the oldest stories on Earth. They're a little bit historical, but they aren't out there only to inform people of the details of what happened. That's kind of like a later mindset. Humanity's most ancient stories are deeply concerned with how and why, as in, how did we get to this place? And why did we come to this place? And most importantly, what does it mean? What are we to understand about the things that we've been through? And more importantly, what are we to understand about ourselves, and each other, the people that we love and the people that we hate? What's the point of life, the universe, and everything? Well, historical facts are this. I grew up in a mid-sized town in Wisconsin. As you know, my name is Evan, but my family and all my old friends all call me Matt. That's the M at the beginning of the title. Around the time my brother and I turned 12, we began to show signs of a significant facial difference. My brother decided he didn't want to get it treated. I went a different direction. I had the surgery, went through the recovery, and at the time, I thought, that is the end of that story. Jump forward 35 years. So I wrote this book called Turtle Boy. Basic plot. It's about a kid, Will, the year before his bar mitzvah, the Jewish coming of age ceremony, and Will's got a facial difference, the same one that I have. And in the opening scene, it matches my own memory beat for beat for beat. But then it veers off. He's basically forced into a friendship with an older kid, RJ, who's his complete opposite. And Will wants nothing more than to hide in his room with his turtle collection. Now, RJ, he is actually stuck in the hospital with a serious chronic illness. But he's got all these things he wishes he could do with the outside world. He's got a bucket list, and Will's the only person who can help. So, task by task, Will takes on the challenges while RJ's condition worsens. And eventually, Will has to confront impending surgery, and RJ's death, and his bar mitzvah. And the first question my readers always ask is, how much of it is true? So let's say 10% historically accurate, but all of it is true. In some ways, Will and I are the same. His name, Will, is an anagram of Matt. W-M, see the letters, 4 letters? But in other ways, we're kind of different. Will is a total recluse. And while I was often very, very lonely, terrified of bullying, I was constantly looking for attention. Will, he wants no one to look at him ever. I always wanted people to see me, just not to stare at me. And we were both called Turtle Boy. And I was so terrified of being called Turtle Boy, I used to take the long way to class. Instead of just walk down the hall, I would go all the way downstairs, past the home ec room, past the shop room. It was like, vanilla, wood shavings. Go up the stairs, walk into class, sit down, look for the bully, make sure he wasn't there, and then I would spend the next 55 minutes, one after the next, trying to be a stand-up comedian. And eventually got to the point where the teacher would be like, Matt, and I'd be like, just let it rip and see what would happen. And maybe every 10 times, I would get a big laugh. And when that happened, I would get so tingly, head to toe, and I'd be like, someday, I want to be an entertainer. I want to be a stand-up comedian. I want to make people laugh. Very un-Will. But like Will, I saw my face as the single biggest problem in my life. So it became the center of my story. Around the time my wife and I got engaged, I was doing what everyone was doing in 2015. I was keeping a blog about men's style. Go figure. Lots of pictures. Me in a sweater, me in another sweater, that's a really cool sweater. Lots of sweaters, lots of me. And she said, you're really good at explaining stuff, making things approachable. You should tell the story of your face. And I was like, that sounds terrifying. And she made me do it. So I drew it as a comic strip, put it into comic form, and it was called How I Learned to Love My Face. And I drew myself as a cute kid, and then my head was replaced by the head of like a Disney turtle, probably violating like a copyright thing of some kind. So one day, I got a call from a literary agent, and he'd seen my comic on social media, and he was like, how would you like to write a novel? And I'm like salivating, I'm like so excited about this. That's how the historical me and this other true me kind of joined hands, created the book that brings me here today, and everyone lived happily ever after. Well, that is the origin story of Turtle Boy, and in some ways, it's also the opening scene of me becoming an author. Over the course of writing and sharing the book with the world, my story changed, and I changed, and it got me thinking a lot about the story of stories, how our own stories got formed, and why. And I started to ask myself, what good did it do to turn this pretty terrible chapter of my life into a book? But also it got me thinking about what good it does to write these stories, and tell these stories, and read these stories. And we are going to explore that question here this afternoon, one act at a time, because we have just completed the first 3 steps of Save the Cat. Does it say Act 1? Over there, somewhere there. What's Save the Cat? So Save the Cat is a book, originally by Blake Snyder, how to write screenplays, and it spawned this whole series of books, writing novels, YA, middle grade literature, all this stuff. And it's kind of polarizing. There's lots of people who love to criticize it. They say, they blame it for basically influencing writers to create formulaic, repetitive Hollywood garbage or whatever. But I read it, and I found it super useful. But let me tell you what he says. So he basically says all stories follow the same 12 steps. He calls them beats. He divides them into 3 acts. And of all my favorite books and movies, they basically do follow the beats. Okay, there's some follow the pattern more closely than others. But I never really thought of it as a formula anyhow. It's really more like a anatomy textbook. Sort of the anatomy of story bones. So like a maxillofacial surgeon can name and locate the 14 bones in my jaw and face, the ones I have, the one I'm supposed to have, the ones that look like everybody else's, the ones that don't. You can see a set of bones, he knows where it goes. Save the Cat helps us to see a story and talk about how it fits together. So, Save the Cat starts with something called the opening image. It's a snapshot, the protagonist's life before the journey of the story. They're nothing special, just kind of going about their lives. This guy, random guy, Luke Skywalker, just an impatient moisture farmer on a planet called Tatooine. Nothing special. He's very impulsive. He's very impatient. He's very bored. There's a war going on somewhere far away. He can't stand, he's not playing a part. He wants to leave home. Opening scene of Wonder. Augie loves his parents and his sister. Loves Star Wars. Enjoys a good fart joke. He looks different. He may not actually mind being different, but he hates being made to feel different. And that fear has kept him at home, quick to judge of others and see them as the enemy. In each case, we meet the main character and we see that they have a problem. But in each case, somebody notices, somebody tries to help. Does it work? Well, think back in your life. You're just going about your business and suddenly somebody says, you know what your problem is? Or they say, you know what you need to change about yourself? Do we take their advice? No! Protagonists never take that advice. I actually remember the day of my bar mitzvah. Didn't have a lot of friends. Felt like no matter what I did, everybody was just seeing a turtle. And my dad was helping me put on a tie. I'm looking down like this, and he's like, look up. Looking down like this, he goes, look up. Look up. He stops and he takes my head, and he puts his hands on my cheeks, and he says, I keep telling you, you have to look up. I couldn't hear that. In Turtle Boy, the theme is stated on the first day of 7th grade. Will is in a terrible mood. He's convinced 7th grade is going to be terrible, and it starts pretty terrible. The lacrosse team sees him walking across the gym, and they start chanting, "Turtle boy, turtle boy." Now it's lunch. Max comes over. Max is like, not really a frenemy, he's more like an annoying pseudo-semi-friend, at least at the beginning of the book. And he's got a brace on his arm. He heard it doing parkour. But instead of being super bummed about it, like I would have been, he's almost like proud of it. It's like a badge of honor. And then 2 popular kids walk by and they're chanting, "Turtle boy, turtle boy." Will, mortified, goes like this. I look down, my eyes glued to my PB&J. This is Will talking. "That is so unfair," says Max. "Why should you get a nickname and I don't?" "What?" I ask. "Are you kidding? In parkour, you get to pick a nickname," he says. "I'm Arrow, but nobody calls me that. I wish I had a cool nickname that people actually used." "Turtle Boy is not a cool nickname," I say coldly. "Why not?" he says. "It's a superhero name. Turtle Boy, like Batman." Does Will say, "You know something? You're right. Turtle Boy is like a superhero name. Hey, the things that make us different, they make us who we are. They become part of our superhero identity." Does he say that? Of course not. And did I say to my dad, "Dad, you got it. You know what? I'm going to stop looking down at myself and I'm going to start looking up and out." Did I say that? Obviously not. Because when somebody tells us how beautiful a human we are, why is it so darn hard to believe them? Answer: the shard. The shard. The shard is a concept. Jessica Brody, it's in the Save the Cat novel book. She says the shard is the wound beneath the surface. It's usually revealed in a story in a flashback, like Will walking around looking at pictures of his dad. He notices that his dad always has a beard. And then he thinks about his dad's death. He doesn't remember, but he's been told when Will was 4, his dad checked into the hospital for a routine ulcer operation and never woke up. Well, this has directly caused his own fear of dying in the operation room. Beyond that, it's led him to conclude this has got to be an unpredictable, meaningless, pain-filled world, and the only way to be safe is to close off. No wonder he doesn't want to visit a kid in the hospital, right? No wonder he doesn't want a bar mitzvah. No wonder he doesn't want anybody to get close, because once you understand somebody's shard, it's so much easier to understand why they do the things they do. Take a moment. Think about that. What's your shard? What secrets do you have? It's not easy to think about, right? And we certainly don't want anybody to know about it, but oh, if people knew, then they would get you. They would understand. Think about the people you know really well, your spouse, your children, your friends, your parents, closest friends. Do you know their shards? Do they know yours? What would it look like, feel like, to talk to them about it? What would it do to your relationship? It's freaky, right? Yeah, that's why most of the time we keep them deep down on the inside. For me, my shard, of course, had to do with my face, but more than that, it was the fear of like, what if that's all I am? What if I am a turtle boy? And the fear of being looked at the wrong way, looked at, never seen, was just kind of pulling me apart. Half of me wanted to be a stand-up comedian or a rock star. I loved the Beatles. I loved the drums. I went down to the basement. I found a suitcase. I found a pair of drumsticks. I would bang on the suitcase all the time with my headphones on. I wanted to be a rock and roll star. But the other half of me wanted to hide in my room and never, ever, ever come out. Now, back to Story Genius. We're moving on to the next beat. It's called the setup. Readers need to see all the ways that the hero is affected by the shard. It gives us a sense of what the hero needs to change. Not wants to change, needs to change. And those things are broken into 3 categories: at work, at play, and at home. For me, I couldn't work or play because I always wanted to be home, hiding in my room. It did affect my friendships. I picked friends and I expected them to basically be my shields. And it got pretty bad inside me also. I felt like I was kind of going crazy. In some ways, I was. Our shards can cause us to zig when we need to zag. It can cause us to run when we need to stay and stand. And it can cause us to stay hidden when we need to get out. That moves us to the catalyst and the debate. If somebody told you, you can release the shard, but it will require you to say yes to a challenge, a shard agitator. It will cause you to get poked again and again, repeatedly, but when you're done, if you survive, you'll be free. Well, in our lives, as part of our growth as human beings, we do that. We're sitting around miserable with a situation, or kind of like content but incomplete, and suddenly something bursts into your space and goes, "Hi! Would you care to take a flying leap out of your comfort zone?" Of course, there's various levels of comfort zone. There's like, I'm not comfortable wearing pastels. And then there's, whoa, hard stop. No, no, no. A really good story has really high stakes. Harry Potter. An owl flies in the window and delivers a letter inviting Harry to show up at Hogwarts. Turtle Boy, Will's rabbi, Rabbi Harris, calls him into his office. Not as cool as an owl, sure, but they're gonna have a serious heart-to-heart because he's quietly blown just about every opportunity that's come along to do a volunteer project, a necessary part of his bar mitzvah, and Rabbi Harris says, we need to figure something out now. If we're desperate enough, we might take on the challenge, leveling up, cutting the cord, taking the plunge. We do them, but only after some debate. Maybe lots of debate. And seriously, if you ask my wife about the debate phase before I proposed, she will tell you all about that. Well, according to Save the Cat, the hero gets a call, a chance, a challenge to go on a journey, rip out the shard. And the journey is gonna be terrifying. And we can see from the setup that if they stay where they are, there's going to be consequences. Life cannot continue like that any longer. But as they debate, they contemplate taking the first step, and the shard starts to vibrate. In Turtle Boy, Will learns that RJ, the kid that Rabbi Harris matches him up with, has a bucket list. And he's got all these excuses why he can't help RJ stuck in the hospital with his bucket list. Could you swim in the ocean? No, there's no ocean anywhere near Wisconsin. Admittedly, this is true. Find a pond? No, leeches. I always stay in the shallow end. No pond. School dance. Okay, guilt. He shows up at the school dance. Then RJ wants him to ride a roller coaster. No, absolutely not. But again, guilt. Goes on the roller coaster. And finally, RJ wants him to go to a punk rock concert in Madison, Wisconsin, and bring back a pair of drumsticks from his favorite drummer from his favorite band. And Will says, forget it. Madison's like an hour away. But then, Will's friend Shira says, if you don't do it, we are through as friends. And she says, I'm gonna go with you to make sure that you do it. And that's when he finds himself in the mosh pit of a punk rock band. And as he gets shoved and pushed and moshed around, something breaks open. Okay, we all do this. We come up with excuses. We justify. We waffle. We bargain. On and on and on until something breaks us open. Or somebody says, you do it, and I will do it with you. And we say, finally, yes, I'm doing it. I'm terrified of it. My reasons for doing it might not be 100% kosher, but I am doing it. So after much debate, we pack our bags. We show up at platform 9 3/4. We step through the wardrobe. We get on the Millennium Falcon, whatever it is, and we say, fine, I want to do it. I want to come out of my shell, but just like a little bit. So what's next on your bucket list? So after this, breaking open is called Break into Two. Act 1 is the character stuck at home, running around, stuck inside themselves. Then Save the Cat calls Break into Two as going down the rabbit hole. Upside down of everything from Act 1. Act 1, you live in a world that's like Dorothy level dreary. Act 2, it's gonna be Oz. For me, I sometimes think about my surgery as one of the catalysts in my life. But if I had to actually pick a break into two, it's the months leading up to the surgery where I told myself, I promised myself that once it was over, Everything in my life was going to be perfect. Here's what I decided. No one would call me Turtle Boy anymore. By the way, I was wrong about that, which would be amazing. It wasn't. But it didn't stop there. I was going to be confident. I was going to have so many friends. Those dreams I had to get up on stage, holding the microphone, being a comedian, making people laugh, being a rock star after the surgery, all those things were just going to happen. But that is not what happened. Okay, now yes, the surgery did improve some very, very important things. Eating was way easier. Breathing was way easier. On the other hand, I actually was not any happier. I continued to be extremely anxious about new situations. I had those 2 super close friends, and I clung to them and made very little effort to meet new people. I found that I had trouble trusting new people, especially boys, but there was something else too. I could feel that there was some other way, that I wasn't truly free. Couldn't figure out what it was. And then one day, I was in a grocery store. This is pre-internet. If somebody wanted something, they had to write it on a piece of paper and hang it on an actual real wall. And it said, drummer wanted for porch band. Now, I had no idea what that was. I knew what a porch was, and I knew what a band was. So I called the number on the card, and the guy talked to me, and he said that this band needed a drummer. And I was like, great. And he says, but there's one catch. The instruments are all homemade, including the drums. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect, because I only play a suitcase. So don't get me wrong. It was a super important experience. It opened many doors. It got me out of my room. It got me out of the house. It even got me into the music scene of Milwaukee. But at the same time, I didn't feel like the audience was there to see me. I was at the back of the stage, kind of hidden behind this pile of pots and pans. So eventually I said goodbye to the band. And I followed my best friend, of course, to college, staying in the same dorm, of course, in college, having him as my roommate, of course, in college. And like I said, I wouldn't let him out of my sight. And after some time, I started thinking, for all this clowning around I've been doing in class, and all my pots and pans drumming, I've never really put myself out there. Enough is enough. I'm doing this. So there was a sign, comedy open mic at a cafe, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. And I signed up, and I did it, and I told some silly stories, and the audience seemed to be loving it. Well, that was it. I was hooked. I wanted more. I did community theater. I played Dracula's crazy weird servant, and later a monkey. Was it artistically satisfying? Not exactly, but I just loved hearing the audience laugh. So before I go any further, let me tell you about a beat in Save the Cat called Fun and Games. Yeah. Okay. So your friend wants to see a movie, and you say, what's it about? Basic story. A hero engages with a mission. If it's a movie about boxing, this is where the coach and the trainer like get down to business. Anybody remember the Karate Kid? Yeah? Karate Kid fans? Okay, so in Karate Kid, a super nerdy, dorky boy gets beaten up by scary bullies. He learns karate from Mr. Miyagi. Fun and Games kicks in the moment Mr. Miyagi signs Daniel up for a tournament against the very bullies who beat him up 15 minutes ago. So this usually starts kind of slow and it builds up to a montage. It could be sports. It could be life or death, and it's still called, in Save the Cat, Fun and Games. Well, in this montage, it covers 10 years. I was way too shy at the beginning to do anything ever. And then at the end of it, experimenting with all these different forms of performance. And then my big opportunity came along. A friend had access to a good-sized local theater, and he offered me the chance for a whole solo act. And you bet there was some debate. Was I ready for this? Did people want to see my weird humor for an hour? Well, the day got closer, and I gathered the material, and I practiced, and I kept thinking, wow, this is the culmination of all the work I've been trying to do on myself. Getting out on stage, not to hide anymore. The audience filled in, and the lights went down, and the curtain went up. And within 2 minutes, I was like, uh-oh, this is not going well. I could tell that nobody was laughing at my jokes. They were being very polite. but the audience wasn't in it. They were looking at me, but they weren't with me. So I ended my career early. I got off the stage, and that was that. My career as a stand-up comic was over. Final, major defeat. Well, looking back at it, it's actually a midpoint. That's the next beat in the Save the Cat structure. To really understand the midpoint and to lay down a foundation for, why it's so important to talk about the midpoints in our stories, in our lives, you gotta know about what Save the Cat calls the A story and the B story. A story. That's where the protagonist is trying to accomplish the thing they set out to do, probably reluctantly. Turtle Boy, Will's trying to help RJ complete his bucket list before time runs out, and he knows time is running out. But the B story, that's actually the more important story. It's the inner journey. It's the character discovering that they have a shard and trying to remove the shard and discovering that it's going to be a pretty terrifying process, a painful experience. The B story is invisible and it's really hard to show. So the A story is like a mask, not so much covering the B story, more making it visible to the naked eye. So in novels and movies, right around the halfway point, there's an athletic field, or a wedding, or a battleground, or on a stage in Madison, Wisconsin, say, for example, right? The A story and the B story collide. The hero is dealing with both stories at the same time, and something significant shifts, externally and internally, and it's very high stakes, victory or defeat. So think for a moment. Maybe you took a big risk, the biggest one yet, and you blew it, or maybe you nailed it, whatever it was, and you had some massive success, but later an even bigger challenge came along, and it really packed you a wallop. Save the Cat calls that the false defeat. So if it's false, couldn't we just skip it, right? It's so unfair. I know. So why do so many movies and books have this feature? Well, this gets us to start thinking more deeply into the question of why it's so important for us to be talking about our stories in the first place, in a room full of folks who've gone through and are going through some pretty significant struggles. Well, the struggles we experience, if they don't have a live electrical wire all the way down to our core, we don't think about them. They just become funny footnotes in history. The time that you tried to fly out of Wisconsin in the middle of December and you got blizzarded in and you ate leftover mac and cheese for 3 days. Do I think about that all the time? No, only when I'm like, honey, should we visit my parents? It's the middle of December. But then there's our core story bank. The stories deep inside you, and they're always there. So critical to who you are that if you remove them from your minds, you wouldn't even be the same person. And now, if you think about those core stories, there are many, many false defeats. No story about your spouse would be complete without the false defeat of the failed relationship beforehand, or the time that you nearly broke up. No story of a dream job is complete without the false defeat of getting fired, or the previous job crushing your soul. The midpoint points to the contrasts. It points to the contrasts, the consequences, to what's at stake. Take a chance. Take a chance on something big. We need to know, the reader needs to know what it means if we win, and what it means if we lose. And also, we need to know. Right here? Okay. We need to, that's the call. Are you there, Zoom? It's me, Margaret. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we need to know. We need to see what it means if we quit. Why is that important? Why is it critical to probe the outlines of success and defeat? Well, to me, it's because it reveals something really, really important. Meaning. We want to know. I'd say we need to know that our struggles matter. They make a difference. We want to feel like the struggles are in the service of some bigger thing, something outside of us, something deep within us. A sacrifice can be meaningful. A dead end, a disaster on stage, that can be like a kind of sacrifice. Ooh, that was painful. But if it leads to something else, something bigger, something deeper in your heart, if we can see that meaning, then we can bear it, right? We can get up, right? We can move forward. What's the tricky thing? Well, we readers, we can see from the remaining 150 pages that clearly the hero isn't down for the count. We haven't even made it to Act 3, but the hero doesn't know that, and nor do we after our own false defeats. Case in point, after what I felt like a comic disaster of epic proportions, I quit comedy. I figured I'd give up. That feeling that I was looking for, getting up on stage with a microphone and bringing joy and laughter to people all around, it's not gonna happen. Turtle Boy has a similar middle point. RJ wanted to play his drums in front of a live audience. He never got the chance. He asked Will to do it. He's been teaching Will drumming week after week after week. And now it's time to show it off. And after lots of debate, Will agrees, terrified to do it under one condition. He can wear a mask. Okay, so to make a long story short, he's up there on stage, big talent show at school, big audience, and he's playing his heart out, he's giving it his all, or so he thinks, and suddenly his mask starts to slide down off his face. So he's gonna have to decide, is he gonna stop and fix the mask and lose all the energy and all the momentum he's been building? Or is he gonna let the mask come off and just let everybody see him, who he actually is? And in some ways, that's what happens when we encounter defeats and victories in life. We discover who we really are, what we really stand for. Act 2, the bad guys close in. Well, now that we've made it past the midpoint, some of us are thinking, woo, now we can just coast to the finish line. No, because now we've raised the stakes, and whatever bad guy has been lurking around, now they're onto us. Oh, poor Dorothy, you thought you were gonna show up at the home of the wizard and he's gonna get you home? We still have 45 minutes left. Let me introduce the Wicked Witch. She's been watching you, and she's not messing around. She is sending out the flying monkeys. In real life, our flying monkeys take all sorts of different forms. All those moments in life when you start to wonder, I think I met my match, right? Super unpleasant and scary, but also a critical opportunity. Because before, we thought we knew what was making our life difficult. But now, we have the first opportunity to see that there's something much more insidious, much more dangerous out there. And we've been distracted, but it's been watching us. For myself as a kid and then a teen, my worst fear was being mocked or made fun of or rejected. But following comedy Armageddon, I realized that what I was afraid of was not failure or rejection. No, Will, his mask threatens to slide down over his face and ruin his rhythm, and for me on stage, I was always wearing a mask. I was keeping my audience at a distance, not really inviting them into my space, because Shard. See, up until then, I'd survived being a teenager by building a big, loud, weird, quirky, class clown persona, a mask. And I told myself that was the real me. But come on, I knew it wasn't. I just wasn't being honest with myself. Yet. So on the one hand, stories can be overpowering. They can be empowering. They can help somebody survive a whirlpool. Stories can do many things. They can set us free. They can hold us down. They can invite people in or make them wait outside. Stories can bring forth the truth. They can remove truth from reality. On a large scale, they can be used to strip groups of rights, justify atrocities. On a small scale, we can deceive those around us with stories without even really realizing it. And most at risk, we can deceive ourselves. Think about it for a moment. Stories we've been telling ourselves about the world. So compelling. But what if the old story has become the new problem? What if we're telling stories to make something complex simple, when what we actually need are more and more complex stories? Well, here we are. It's the call again. Hello. All right. So either they'll give up or I'll give up first. We'll see what happens. Also, this is a planned opportunity for me to take a water break. Totally fine.
I think it's because it's running.
Okay. So I teach high school, so like literally that's like a 1 on the Richter scale of interruptions. Unless a table gets flipped over, like I'm not even gonna bet. Don't flip a table. Okay. That would be the big test, right? So it's easy to tell in a book or a movie when we've arrived at the third act because things start moving really quickly. The hero's up against not the little emissary of evil, but now finally it's the boss. And Turtle Boy, I thought all along that Will's final battle would be completing RJ's bucket list, maybe his surgery, confronting the death of his friend. That's gotta be the final battle. But then, it's springtime. Will has climbed out of the worst depression with the help of his friends, Max and Shira, and he's demonstrated some pretty serious growth in a whole bunch of ways. And now it's the day of Will's bar mitzvah. It's got to be the victory celebration, right? He's reading from the Torah. He's speaking from the heart. He's delivering a speech that for a turtle boy would be impossible. And the world is looking at his face, and he's speaking clearly and confidently. He is a turtle no longer. But then he starts to feel this choking sensation, and he realizes that his breathing is constricted. And he puts his hand here, and he feels the necklace, the shell necklace, the final gift given to him by RJ. Once again, he has two choices. Hold on to the grief, continue to be stuck in the shell of the death of his friend, and even deeper down, his own father. Remember the shard? Or loosen the necklace from around his neck and dig the shard out of his back. Dig down deep, making that choice to take his own first breath. Rebirth. Save the Cat says it takes multiple steps to win any final battle. Here's a few of them by name. Pretend that there are a few of them by name, right there. Okay, well fortunately I have my script, so fine. A few of them by name. Rallying the troops, storming the castle, discovering, surprise, the treasure or the prince or the princess isn't even there. The treasure's been moved. They've been tricked. Ambush. Too late. The button has been pressed. The dark magic has been released. So many movies, right? You can almost see it. Karate Kid, the hero laying crumpled in a heap. But then the music shifts. Something is happening. The hero digs down deep and discovers some small, silent voice. A voice that says, "Get up. Get up." And they rise to their feet. And then in a moment of grace, they rise clean off the ground, leaving their old self, their old limitations behind. Wouldn't that be cool if I just did an awesome crane kick right here? Podium. Okay. The embodiment of sacrifice of balance. Victory! Hugs! The final image. We see the world, not just the hero, the entire world transformed, redeemed. The hero's courage, the devotion of their family and friends has brought victory, the A story and the B story. The world and the readers will never be the same. By the way, it was exactly 90 seconds from the time Karate Kid ended to the time I ran and asked my parents if I could take karate lessons. How influenced I was. Well, we love novels and movies for many reasons, but one of them is the way it amplifies these final battles. The tension of the drama is so huge, the payoff is so satisfying. In our lives, though, many of our finales, our final battles, they're not up on stage. They're not on the battleground, but they're more like quiet leaps of faith we take, making really difficult decisions and seeing them through, showing up when we're scared, being a great dad or mom or grandparent or mentor, even and especially when we don't know what to do, but we show up. And for me, that was leaving the stage for the stand-up comedians and instead deciding to become the next best thing, a teacher. That's, thank you, right? Seriously, that's where making one kid in the whole room laugh is like a major win. Also, my dad jokes get a lot of use, so it's a good career. Funny enough, I find myself actually on stage more than I ever imagined. Sometimes running assemblies, sometimes doing something really important with the microphone, holding it towards the mouths of teens who have their own stories to tell. I've discovered deep satisfaction in being sometimes a storyteller, but more often a story gatherer. I don't think I'm ever gonna pull the shard from my back. I think it's become part of me. But there would be no me without the shard. My successes and the pain have made me who I am, and there's only one of me. So it's best to honor each part for what it is, and what it does, and what it lets me do. So, turning to this room, we must celebrate, because in this room there are so many amazing, powerful, incredible stories. I've spent 3 weeks on Zoom and on the phone with kids, teens, adults, some of them in this room right now. On those phone calls, I've met many artists, many heroes, many stories of battles, A stories and B stories, some incredible finales, lots and lots and lots of difficult midpoints. It is a story very worth telling. But before we end our time together, there's one difficult thing I want to talk about, and that might seem like the exact opposite of everything I've been making the case for, and that is this. We've already spoken about the need to be cautious with how we use stories, right? But still, it doesn't feel honest or right for me to pretend as if stories in any way can just make everything right. There are real hardships in this room and outside of this room. You might be in the midst of something right now at some difficult midpoint. It's way too soon to hold it as one. It can leave one with a feeling like, how can we tell any happy story with reality out there all around us? How do we tell stories of courage, of love, good winning against evil, while we know that that's just not the way that life always works? Because sometimes stories do fail us. Sometimes there's no story to turn to. Suffering, visible and invisible. God, the more you learn, sometimes it feels like enemies closing in. That's not a trick of storytelling, it's like the actual state of the universe. And as a teacher and a parent of 2 little kids, I mean, I read the news. Sometimes I'm just like, God, there is no place left on earth safe from the darkness. Save the Cat calls this moment dig down deep. You don't stand a chance. But now, the enemy has shown itself. And if it has shown itself, it has revealed itself, its full, actual self. It's given itself away, which means that there might be one shot, one small shot, because we have a secret weapon, better than a proton torpedo, better than a magic sword, even better than a crane kick. You know what it is? Do you? Thought I was going to say stories, right? Nope. That's called the Hightower surprise. Because inside that tower, the tower of story, we break down the door and no treasure. And we're just standing here looking around, looking at each other. And then we turn to each other and we go, hey, it's you. It's you. It's us. My Friends, we are the treasure, and we are the secret weapon against the darkness. We didn't just understand where or when or how until we discovered that the big fight happens here, right now, with each other. It's a fellowship, not of the ring, of the heart. And that brings us to the final image. Every story, according to Save the Cat, ends somehow back where it started. The hero returns home. If tragically there is no home left, the hero must begin the next quest, the actual bigger quest, to build right there on the ruins of the old camp and the old self, placing at the center the one thing that inspired them in the first place. In Act 1, I told my own story to fill some kind of a void, but in Act 3, I keep telling it. My hope is that my story helps to create a map, a topographical map with the highs and lows of, a pretty treacherous landscape, but also some vistas, some oases. Many of you in this room are experts, far more than I, in looking for them. And though this has been my story, the map does not belong to me, and I am not the only contributor. On the contrary, life is way too big for any single story to illuminate all the safe passages. This life requires many stories. Enough stories for every human in our community to begin to see themselves reflected in the stories, to know that others have crossed or are crossing that landscape, steps in front, steps to the side, helping to heal the wounds at each other's backs. Isn't that exactly what culture is? Right? A way of receiving and telling stories, a map for life. Isn't that the job of every adult, every teacher, every parent, every crossing guard, every National Guard, to work through our stories so we can contribute in a lifelong, ongoing way to the map? Why? To help readers, adults, and children, the ones in this room, the ones in the future, to help them find a way. And it's going to take a trove of stories to illuminate all the shadows. We need stories of courage and stories of comfort. We need stories that make us laugh, stories that teach us how to laugh, what to laugh at, what to cry at, how to cry. We need stories that teach us what's worth staying alive for, and what is hope, and how to hope. We need stories that teach us what a convenient lie looks like, what an inconvenient truth looks like, when a mother or father or sister or brother can look like, and a million stories about magic aunties and magic uncles and magic elders. We need stories about what a teacher looks like, how God might move in the world, how we can move in the world, how we can move each other through the world safely. We need stories that teach, what does a catalyst look like in your own life? How do you work through a debate? How do you tell if you're laying on the ground because you're working through a midpoint? What's the gateway to the third act? We need stories that teach us how to rally allies, how to expect the high tower surprise, how to dig down deep, how to marshal the power of storytelling to build resilience and compassion and a sense of purpose. We need so many stories because we don't know, right? Maybe there's one young reader, child in this room, somewhere in a town a million miles away. Maybe they just read their 10th story or their 100th story, and suddenly that's the one that clicks. That's the one that makes them stand up in the shadows and say, no, 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 I am not a turtle. I am a human. I am a hero. In a world where no one seems to understand, where no one seems to care, we come armed with our weapons of hope and humor, trust, friendship, compassion, love. This ragtag band of brothers and sisters, we will storm the castle. We will slip and climb and fall and get up and keep climbing every tower until we discover in the innermost chamber that there's no story outside of us. We are the tellers of the stories. We are the readers of the stories. And we are, in fact, the stories. So there is a happy ending after all. It's not one we discover at the end of a book. It's one we create together right here, right now, as part of our collective, never-ending story. Thank you.
Some Q&A.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, guys, I'm going to find my walking mic, and we're going to start setting up for the parent panel. The sibling panel will start at 3:30, so if you're on that or you're going to that, that'll be in the Pisces, or in the Maryland suite. But let me find my walking mic and we'll take a few questions for our author here. Okay, I don't think we have a walking mic, so if you want to ask a question, feel free to stand up. I'll recognize you, and you can come forward if you feel comfortable. If not, I'll come to you and hear what it is and make sure we can hear it. Tori, I saw you had a question. Yeah.
Hi, Tori.
Oh, I think it'll pick you up right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long will it take you to write a book?
How long did it take?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the question is, how long did it take to write a book? The answer is, like many stories, it depends on where you see the beginning. So I would say my answer usually ranges between 3 and 5 years, depending on whether it was the comic part of it, and then I wrote a bunch of really like terrible magical realism versions where Will could talk to. It was terrible. And so, like, do I count that? I don't want to count it, but you might want to count that. So, you know, 3 to 5 years, and a lot of editing, and a lot of editing, and then more editing, and then more editing, and then more editing. The secret weapon facilitator. I'm sorry, I missed that. One more time.
What is a turtle kid?
What is a turtle kid? For me, it was the way I received it in the first half of my life was an object for others to look at and reduce to their own meaning. Later, I started to see it as the opportunity to work through something that all humans have to work through. I just had a blunter opportunity to do that than some. And the funny thing is that when the original titles in the book were not Turtle Boy, I think it had 4 different versions. There was like Year of the Turtle, believe it or not, Turtles All the Way Down was a contender. And then that book came out, and I was like, John Green? Who the heck do you think you are? But I actually slip a reference to Turtles All the Way Down in the book as kind of a shtick at him, so put that in there. The Year of the Turtle, and then finally, I was like, this is stupid. Why am I dancing around what it ought to be called? It'd be so funny and ironic if I named it the thing that used to make me run away down the hall hiding. So. Looks like we have one maybe over here somewhere. You can see her. Somebody over there? No? Last call, questions?
Okay, last call for questions. I do want to remind everybody, tomorrow at 1, we're going to do another workshop that I'm so excited. We'll have 3 of our preteen teens joining us, Jasper, Abby, and Shane. So please come and support our, it'll be more of a talk show style. So we're really excited about that. But how about one more announcement, and then we'll be signing books at Ocean and Thursday and Friday morning. So bring your book if you want to get it autographed. And I think one more round of applause.
Have a great day, everybody.